What's up, everyone? How y'all doing? Checking the sound system. Do you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Wonder. Audio? I'm on the right mic. Can you? Oh, good, good. Thank you, MR. All right, just a little bit of lag on this. So I want to say some hellos to everyone. Hello, Chu. Sign up. I love the Tesla avatar. That's so cool. Oregon, welcome. MR, Long Live Coins, Lisa Anderson. And so far, that looks like all I've got, which is okay. So basically, this is going to be a very interesting live stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. This is a very special one. So let me lay down some ground rules. After this information I'm sharing with, we'll be introducing our guest. He has limited time, so he will be leaving at his discretion. I have invited a panel up for further discussion. I support the First Amendment. Differing opinions are welcome as long as you are respectful. Mods are not to hide comments or discharge participants unless the language is foul, offensive, and disrespectful. If it is not blatantly evident, mods are to contact me in capital letters, please, in capital letters, and I'll make the final determination. Now on to business. West Virginia has proposed House Concurrent Resolution 203. I'll find that here in a little bit and bring it up. This is going to be going to the Committee on the Judiciary. I'm not a lawyer or a politician, nor am I a financial advisor. My opinions and that of the panel are theirs and only theirs, but it is newsworthy. The opinions of our guest is a little more important because he is part of the legislature and understands being a legislature and how things work a lot better than those of us who do not participate in such work. Keep in mind, West Virginia mountaineers are proud people. They're resilient, smart, able to join together in hard times. I saw this when the chemical plant spilled 10,000 gallons of 4-methyl cyclohexamethanol into the Kanawha River in January 9, 2014. At that time, I was in Dollywood on holiday. When I returned with a truckload of clean water, I saw how the people had adapted. The National Guard got mobilized, and the community joined forces. To quote Hank Williams Jr., a country boy can survive. That's something I think a lot of people in Washington don't understand. Same thing with North Carolina. You could see that yourself on the internet. All I can say is, like the North Carolina people had said, if you can't help, get out of our way. As a reminder, once our guest leaves, I'll be inviting a panel up for further discussion. I'm now proud to introduce our guest. Many of you know him from my videos and live streams. He is Delegate Chris Pritt. He has introduced bills to recognize gold and silver as money. He runs a successful law practice in Charleston, and I'm happy to have him back. When he leaves, I'll be asking the panel up for discussion. Welcome, Mr. Pritt.
Hello, Tiger. Nice to be with you again.
Nice to be with you too, sir. Mm-hmm. So, as we had talked before about House Concurrent Resolution 203, I have some questions for you. The first of which is to tell us about 203. Is it a law, a bill, something else? Help us understand. And then we'll go to a couple other questions, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, that's an excellent question. I've had actually you and one other person asked me about this. in terms of what exactly is the meaning of this. Is it a bill? What exactly is it? Well, in West Virginia and in most states, there's a distinction between a bill and a resolution. So a bill is a proposed law. A bill is something, for example, that would have to pass both houses of the legislature, and that's the case in just about every state, except for, I believe, Nebraska, where they only have one legislative body. But generally speaking, it has to pass both houses of a legislative body. And then at that point, it would go to the governor to be approved. So that's a bill. It's what most people think of when they're talking about an actual law. Now, House Concurrent Resolution 203, and it was proposed by a friend of mine, Bill Eisenhower. It is a resolution. Okay, so and there's different types of resolutions. Now, in West Virginia, there's what we call a joint resolution, and this is not one of those. That is essentially a resolution for a proposed amendment to the West Virginia Constitution. In West Virginia, the way it works is if a proposed joint resolution gets a supermajority of 2/3 of the votes, at that point, it goes before the people, and then the people vote on that proposed joint resolution for a constitutional amendment. So joint resolutions are for constitutional amendments in West Virginia, and I think that might be the same thing in other states. What we have here, though, is something known as a concurrent resolution. A concurrent resolution is a resolution that can do one of several things. One type of concurrent resolution that doesn't apply here is when we're talking about internal procedures of a legislative body. So, for example, the internal processes about how a bill makes its way through the legislative process, or who can speak and when they can speak. All of that would be governed by rules that would come down in the form of a concurrent resolution. That's something that falls within a concurrent resolution. It would have to be passed by both houses, or alternatively, you can have a type of resolution that just passes one for internal procedures. Now, that's not what we're talking about here. Something else that's considered to be a concurrent resolution is when a legislative body, in particular here, the House of Delegates of West Virginia, and if it were to pass the House of Delegates, also the West Virginia State Senate, to express sentiment. Okay, so in other words, if the legislature wants to speak with one voice and state, this is our collective sentiment on a particular topic, then we can pass a concurrent resolution, and it's our opinion, our sentiment about a topic of public importance. So if it gets through both houses of the legislature, at that point it would go, and it would be considered to be a resolution that is adopted by the legislature. It doesn't go in front of the governor. It's solely a legislative act. So, for example, on all sorts of topics, we can express sentiment. And that's what this one is. Bill has proposed a concurrent resolution that is expressing sentiment about what should happen in the event that there is election interference by either the federal, international, or other governmental entities, in broad terms, about if there's, for example, some sort of election interference, what should happen when that happens. It's a recommendation, a proposal, it's sentiment on the part of the legislature. And so that's effectively what it is that's gone through, and it's been introduced by Bill Eisenhower along with a number of other co-sponsors. So that's essentially the difference between a concurrent resolution and a bill.
Thank you. I'm going to temporarily bring this up here while we're talking, but let me introduce you this next topic. What is the flavor of the politics in your district? Is this only felt by a few? Is it widely accepted? You know, what's your observation?
This particular resolution, should it go to a vote, I think would pass overwhelmingly. That's my opinion about. Now, I don't have any, it's not been voted on at this point, but I think for the most part, I think it would get overwhelming support. Probably none of the Democrats, but we don't have that many Democrats in the legislature in West Virginia. In the House of Delegates, which is the lower house, there are only 11 out of 100 members who are actually Democrats. In the state Senate, 3 out of 34 are Democrats. All of those, I would say, are most likely they would be voting against this resolution. And I would say the vast majority of the Republicans, if this were to come to a vote, would be voting in favor.
Yeah, I think most of the people I know are tickled pink when they first found out about this. In fact, I want to call out someone who's not here right now, Stacking Surfer. As you all know, I've been recovering from a seriously horrible leg infection, so I was soaking the leg in Epsom salts, and he texted me pretty late at night, but that's okay because I'm used to late night. And that's how I first found out about it, and I started investigating it. And he was very happy about it, but we were both worried that what that might lead to. One of the concerns I had thoughts of, if enough states do this and pass it and enact upon it, if there is a stolen election, could that potentially lead to civil war?
I would hope not. I would hope that anything of that sort would not lead to civil war. That would be a scary circumstance. My hope is that I don't think that we're going in that direction at this point. I mean, I think we might be at the earliest 10 years away from something like that. I don't foresee that being something that happens within the next couple of years, but that's just my opinion.
I would hope that we're not in that position either. However, you never know. Things can turn into something a whole lot worse.
Hmm.
And to be honest with you, this is such a huge topic issue that ranks up there with our one and only Civil War, as far as I'm concerned. Serious split in the people's opinion. So that does and bring us into that. And one of the reasons I bring that question up is, as you and I talked a couple of days ago, I still haven't joined an organization called X,
Hmm.
uh, that used to be Twitter, bought by Elon Musk. You had seen his comment. Well, I'd seen it on other YouTube media. And basically, long story made short, I hope you don't hear the dog barking. My wife's a dog trainer. And so if you hear that, I apologize. Um, but his post on social media was that if Trump doesn't get elected, this will be our last election, because they're shipping lots of illegals into the swing states, and if they win and can get away with the cheating, then they're going to continue to do it, so that in such a way that our country will almost 100% solely be a one party system, and the only elections we're really going to have is primaries within the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So,
And you
but
know how,
your opinion?
Tiger, the way if I could just interject there real quickly, the way I kind of interpreted that is I didn't think he meant in a literal sense that we wouldn't have any elections. What I think he meant there was the system would just be so rigged that anybody who's not a liberal Democrat could not win a majority in enough of those districts. So, for example, if you have let's say we have a bunch of people that are here illegally, and then all of a sudden, whoever's president decides to legalize them and make them U.S. citizens, hypothetically, that could really turn the tide in a lot of these swing states. States could go from being legit swing states to being uh, states that reliably vote Democrat. And I think that's what he meant by that. But I mean, others might have an opinion as well on it. So in other words, it would be the system would just be so rigged against conservatives and constitutionalists that there would be no chance of winning a majority from that point forward.
No, it wouldn't be. No, it wouldn't be, and I'd hate to see that happen. But honestly, considering what they have done, it's very Marxist,
Hmm.
very socialist, and working on my live stream. I got new hardware to interact with last night, so we did a impromptu live stream. My friend Frosty introduced to me the concept between socialism and communism. But one of the things that I'm still trying to get that wrapped around my head between socialism and communism. But the thing is with that, I mean, if that happens, we've pretty much, whether we like it or not, in my opinion, lost the oomph behind the Constitution.
Yes.
And I wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
Oh, I think so. I think completely that's the case. I mean, we have to get back to being a country that is based on constitutional principles. I think that we're at a real risk of going down that road. I mean, especially if the right people get in power, I think it's we're basically done. However, that being said, I feel I'm by nature an optimist. Okay. A lot of the people out there watching this might be a little down on this particular election. I think we have a legitimate chance of winning this election. Okay. And it's not that I don't think even a lot of your listeners and viewers, they might not think that Trump is the most perfect candidate, but I mean, he's the best alternative that we have. He really is. And it's just a matter of whether we're going to go down that route of socialism or whether we're going to be able to keep some semblance of the values that our country was founded upon. I mean, I think that's what we're looking at with this election. And I think it's really, really important that people go out to vote. I think it's incredibly important that folks, if they have some time, that they, if this is really important to them, to volunteer their time, even if they can't afford to make a donation to somebody, or whether it's President Trump or anybody else, if they can volunteer their time, I mean, it can really make a difference. I mean, we're talking about. I had this conversation. I'm actually on X as well, and if anybody wants to follow me on there, my handle is at Pritt for the people. That's Pritt, Pritt, and the number 4, the people. And I had a conversation on there talking with somebody. They were effectively saying, well, Biden beat Trump by, all these millions of votes. Well, that's not the case. That's really not the case. We have a system where we have an electoral college. And based on the electoral college, if you swing 40,000 votes in 3 states and from 2020, Georgia, with Wisconsin and Arizona, Trump wins the electoral college. That's how close it is. And if you're looking at the polls right now, I study these polls. He's doing far beyond what he was doing in 2020 and 2016. I mean, I don't necessarily trust the polls, but if you take him at face value, him and Kamala are basically even at this point. And I think the polls are even rigged against Trump right now, because I think there's a lot of people out there that will not answer polls. They don't know what the motivations are behind the individuals who are doing the polls. They don't want to be, outed, and they don't want to they don't want anything bad to happen to them or their family from some leftists. So I think Trump is. I think he's probably going to win. That's just my assessment at this point. I think if you look at even the prediction markets, I don't know if anybody here follows prediction markets at all. We cannot technically, from what I understand, we cannot technically have prediction markets here in the United States on presidential elections, but they do it all over the world. And based on those prediction markets, as of today, Trump has about a 54% chance of winning. These are people who are actually betting money on the election around the world. They think he has about a 54% chance of winning. And I'm not saying that that's a given, but that he's actually going to win. But I think that's something that's really, really meaningful in terms of his chances.
I agree with you on a lot of that. I watch a particular YouTube who's not in the stacking community. He is more about politics, and his channel goes by the name Fanfare with Barry Cunningham, and Barry Cunningham is in Florida. He's a older, chubby, light-skinned African American, very funny,
Mhm.
very Republican, very conservative, very much Trump oriented. But he also does his own research, and he's gotten into things that I wouldn't know how to because I'm not the best tech person. But he has shown that a lot of these polls are old information. They have not. A lot of them have not redone their polling. They just present the same information over and over again. But if you also look at the fact that you went from all the things they attacked Trump on over the last 8 years, they probably they wouldn't have gone after him if he didn't try to get reelected. The increase in legal activity, then the two assassination attempts. This is all efforts by desperate people,
Mhm.
and I'm never one who agrees with everyone about everything. I could go into a long-winded talk, which I won't do today, about how Trump almost handed over aviation to the private industry, and it was shot down. That was one thing that I seriously didn't agree with him about.
Mhm.
But but when the people had spoke and it came out, he didn't fight the people. I'll give him that.
Yep.
The thing is that the polls, I think, entirely are rigged. I think m- most of the media is rigged, and
Mhm.
I agree with you, especially about people in our state. They're sick and tired of fake phone calls, scammers, and all that. And if someone calls them up for a telephone poll, they're probably not going to answer, or they're probably going to take a negative approach to that person on the phone.
And that's the reason I think looking at the prediction markets it's a little bit more reliable. I mean, I think the people who are betting money on the election around the world have factored that in. They look at how far off the polls were in 2016, how far off the polls were in 2020, and I think that's what you see right now. I think the reason, even though on paper the election is a dead heat, um, in terms of at least the national numbers, the people who are betting money are saying that Trump has a legit chance of winning. So, Tiger, it looks like there's a couple of questions. Do you want me to
Okay.
answer some of these?
Yeah. Let me get to this here.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to go back. I'll put them on the screen here. Let me go back up here. I apologize. I got into discussing it with you that I didn't think about that. Thank you.
sure,
Uh,
no problem.
it, I'll skip the one about X because that's not on the topic we're on. Uh, let's see here. I'm not finding the questions yet. Um, Thank you, MR, for the $5 super chat. I'm not seeing the questions. What are you seeing?
Let me see here. There was one. I see one down close to the bottom here. I started from the bottom. I think Amy had a question. Excuse me. I'm a little bit below the weather too, so I apologize if everyone hears me coughing a little bit. I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum. Looks like here one from Amy asking about any updates on the possibility of getting rid of the electoral college. I think personally it would be a heavy lift for them to actually pull that off. There is one organization that is attempting to effectively have a basically to create a system where if enough states get together and they decide that their electoral college votes are going to go to whoever wins the popular vote, then that's effectively what would happen. However, not enough states have signed on to that. They would have to win. They would have to get to at least 270 votes of worth of states to sign on to that. They're not anywhere. I don't think they're close to that at this point. I think there might be at they may be. I think you're right. Actually, they might be at 72%. That's probably what you're talking about there. I think 72% of the states want to no longer. Well, I think That might be the case, but not enough have signed on. There has to be enough states worth 270 votes that would in theory have to sign on to completely have their electoral college votes go to the winner of the national popular vote. And they would have to win over several of these swing states. They would have to win over states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan and a number of other states. And the interesting thing about it is those states are loving this election right now because they are at the center of the political universe. There's seven states right now that are going to decide the election. All of the money, all of the attention are focused on those seven states. And it would take a number of those states to sign on to say our votes are going to go to the winner of the national popular vote. Well, they don't want that because they want all of the attention focused on them. So I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon. That's not the, it's certainly it's too late for that for this election, but it would take a lot for that to pass. And then, of course, even at that point, you would have to get over some constitutional arguments as to whether that's even permitted. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about whether that act that they're trying to do would even be constitutional. I'm not sure, but it would, at a minimum, it would take states amounting to 270 states to sign on to that. 270 electoral college votes, excuse me, would have to sign on to that, and they're below that at this point.
Wow. That is seriously a scary, scary thought.
Yes.
You know, I think because of the fight that our forefathers had against England and what they had lived through,
Mm-hmm.
that gave them that adversarial position, gave them the wisdom to come up with the system that they came up with. Plus,
Right.
working through the initial, how do we do this? How do we do that? Because we didn't just win the war and we had the Constitution and everything else all in place. That was all built over time. And I think that our forefathers not only trying to figure out how to make a government, but also how to not reinvent what they had left, gave them the wisdom to give us what we have now. And the concerning the concern I have is all these people wanting to rewrite history, and wanting to remake our government in the way they want it, and they don't have the wisdom that our forefathers did. So,
Mm-hmm.
so my vote is to stick with the wisdom of our forefathers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, absolutely. I'm completely there with you, Tiger. I think that we have a system of checks and balances. It is incredibly difficult to get any kind of major pieces of legislation through Congress, and I think that's actually a good thing. I mean, the one if there's any kind of issue that we have majorly in our system right now is the fact that Congress is almost encouraged to pass these continuing resolutions to raise the debt ceiling over and over again. And again, I mean, I'm not necessarily signing on to the idea that we default on our debt. I don't know if I'm there yet at this point, but look, the one thing that I think is a problem that we need to really, really work on as a country is getting a handle on our national debt. And I think that's one of the most monumental problems facing our country right now is figuring out a way to balance our budget. I mean, and I think we've talked about this before. I'm personally in favor of abolishing the Federal Reserve. But I mean, I know that's not what we're talking about today, but look, we have a system that largely works in terms of making it difficult to get legislation through. And the thing about that, along with the Electoral College, is that it's a check on tyranny. I mean, even if whoever's president, whether it's Kamala or Trump or whoever, they're not going to be able to do just whatever they want. There's going to be limitations, unless, of course, the Democrats do what they want to do and rig it. make it so that Republicans can't win anymore using our immigration system. I mean, that's a real threat. That's a real threat. But barring something like that, we have a system of checks and balances to make sure no one branch of government has absolute power. And I think that's a good thing.
I totally agree with you. And those of us in a stacking community and the collectors, such as the numismatists, study the history of coins, remember it. I pieced this all together 3 years ago, where basically our government allowed in 2007 for banks and other states to print paper money willy-nilly to create a crisis so that they could con the people to beg for them to take over. 2010, the lead financiers had a meeting at Jekyll Island. 3 years later, the same got the Fed to be introduced into our government and accepted. And since then, the inflation has gone up. It got worse with the separation of gold as the standard for money in 1971 with President Nixon, and
Mhm.
inflation has gotten seriously worse. Last I heard when I first started with our stacking community was we were at 3% of the original purchasing power when the Fed took over, and it's not federal, and they have no reserve. It's a bunch of bankers, powerful bankers, and I think that those bankers and other people in power are in charge behind the scenes. In fact, I watched something that on YouTube that Elon Musk had done an investigation on Kamala, and she's being backed by a bunch of Silicon Valley big bankers, and that's possibly how she rose to power in such a great time. So they're probably pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
Yes. No, I think that makes perfect sense to me.
So I pulled up on the screen here something that my buddy Frostbite put on here. I always misquote this, so thank you, Frosty. Hard times create hard men. Hard men create easier times. Easier times make easier men, and easier men make hard times. We are in a hard time.
Mhm. I've heard that quote before too. Yes, absolutely.
And a lot of us in this world are not fans of politics. But
Mhm.
I'm not going to be able to quote this, but I can paraphrase it pretty well. It's from Plato that if you don't want to be involved in politics, you are going to be led by your inferiors.
Mhm.
There's no other way to then you have to be involved. If you don't stay involved, you're going to get we're going to fall apart.
Absolutely. And one of the things that a lot of times people have a misconception about is they think that these people that are involved in politics, I mean, this is a common attitude that I hear from some people sometimes. They think their so-called leaders are somehow smarter than them, and that they're more competent than them. And that's absolutely not the case. The people who are able to win elections, including myself, because I've won quite a few elections, and I think I'm otherwise a pretty competent and smart guy, but that had nothing to do with the fact that I won some elections. I won elections because I understand politics and I understand how it works. Okay. It has had nothing to do with my competence. I'm surrounded by people all the time who are completely incompetent, who don't have the knowledge that you would think they would need to have to be in politics. And that's just the reality of it. They understand politics. They understand how to work the levers of power to get into office. It's as simple as that.
Uh,
Um, I had a conversation with my wife just last year. She was just elected family court judge in here in Kanawha County, and I'm really really happy she won. But she was one of the things that she asked me was, well, I mean, aren't there other people out there that aren't these like the very very best people that always become the judges? And isn't there a reason why they're in those positions? Not necessarily. It not necessarily. It's a lot of times it has to do with political instincts and knowing how to get into these offices. I think, by the way, I think she's going to do an excellent job as a family court judge here in Kanawha County. But look, it's the people who are in these positions, whether they're a judge, a legislator, a member of Congress, it's not because they're the best and the brightest. It's because they understand politics. And so it's unfortunately that's the reality that we live in, but everybody should be skeptical of anyone who is in any kind of political position, including me, including the representative that represents you in your state legislature or represents you in Congress. Be skeptical of them, question their motives, question their background, question them all of the time, because you should never take what they say you take what I say for a grain of salt, just like them. Okay. I hope that you can at least do your own research, but it's important that for everybody to not put anybody in any kind of position of power up on a pedestal. I think that's the wrong thing to do, Joe. And I think it's important to do because anybody in any kind of position of authority needs to be accountable. They need to be held to account for what they do and what our government is actually doing, whether it's in West Virginia or throughout the country. I think that's really, really important.
I understand. Um, and I think we have seen evidence of the moving in power just simply by someone who is not competent because of the word salad that we keep hearing with all the questions that have been proposed.
Hmm.
I don't hear any policy. I don't hear any plans. Um, I think that person forgets what she's said to other people. And when she clearly stated, I can't think of one thing I would do differently, that pretty much said it all.
Yep. Oh, that was outrageous. How can you not say not one thing? I mean, come on. I mean, it's one of two things. Either she's lying or she has no ability to think critically. No ability whatsoever. Because look, anybody who's been president, there's at least one thing. There's probably lots, but at a minimum, there's at least one thing you could criticize them over. I mean, whether that's President Trump, any other president that we've had, there are things that you can point out where they could have done something differently. They could have done something better. And and to me, it's obvious that she's not ready to be president. She doesn't have I don't think she has the temperament. I don't think she has the ability to think critically on anything. I think you're absolutely right, Tiger. There are people behind the scenes that are telling her what to do, what to say, how to act, and she's trying to dodge questions. I think that's one of the oldest plays. That's one of the oldest playbooks out there. I mean, look what Biden did in 2020. He sat in his basement, didn't go out and talk to anybody, and I think eventually that caught up with him. I mean, he was really exposed in that debate.
Yes,
And
he was.
yeah, and so and I think people are starting to see the same thing with Kamala. I think people are starting to wake up and see that for all practical purposes, in terms of her as a candidate, she's a fraud. I mean, I know that's probably some strong words, but I think she really is. I mean, if you look at the definition of somebody who's a fraud, it's somebody um, who puts themselves out in a certain manner, and who they are as a person is completely to the contrary. And I think that is exactly what Kamala is.
I think there's a large component of that. Um, there has been talk about, especially early on in her career, that she did other activities with, I think his name was, maybe I got the first name wrong, Jesse Brown, to get herself up and moving. That may be a part of it, but I don't think that's all of it. I think she's not competent, but I think more importantly, she realizes for her to continue to move up, she has to be the puppet for the people in financial power.
Hmm. Oh
And
yes,
she's going to sell us down the river.
yes.
My wife's only major concern, she's from Ukraine, as I had mentioned to you before.
Hmm.
She is convinced that uh, that Trump is going to sell Ukraine down the river and give Putin everything he wants because of what's coming through with the Russian media. And um, I don't know what to do with that because I know from all my history lessons, ever since the war with Napoleon, they became experts at propaganda.
Hmm.
Putin is a master. So, you know, are they trying to mess with people's minds to get people to vote a different way? Is it political double talk? So I mean, that's certainly outside of our country, but it can affect because, one way I'm hearing that they love Trump and they want him in because they think they're going to get what they want. And then I've heard another thing that said that they want Kamala. So, like I said, uh, the Russian propaganda has got centuries of practice, um, and I don't know what to think. But on the other side of the coin, when you look at uh, when you look at the fact that our government is in serious decline, we don't produce anything anymore. We aren't the Industrial Revolution. We're losing power as the world reserve currency because of the BRICS nations. Uh,
Hmm.
I think we're in serious trouble, and the only way to do that is to return to the old ways. Bring industry back.
Hmm.
Bring uh, uh, bring back the basics, just like in football or any other sport. And I'm not really a sports fan, but when a team starts losing, they go back to the basics every time. It's time for our
Hmm.
basics. So I'm going to quit talking because you're the guest. I shouldn't be. Yeah.
Oh, it's fine. No, I agree completely. No, it's about going back to the basics. It's about in terms of our economy, just making it work for everybody. And I think it's getting us back to capitalism and making sure that people aren't dependent on government. I mean, I think that's one of the things, and I think that's better for people in terms of their psyche too. I mean, in terms of their mental health, not being dependent on the government, I think is a positive thing for the mental health of anybody out there. It's that the idea that you're going to be dependent upon others. I mean, some people can't help it. I mean, if somebody is disabled and they have no ability to make a living, okay, that's fine. But if we're talking about able-bodied people, it can't be mentally healthy for a person to just not work and just not do anything. And I think that that's the reason the capitalist system is the best alternative that we have. I think one of the best things that I've heard about described about the capitalist system is that it's the best. It's not, there are imperfections in it probably, but that doesn't mean it's not the best. It's a far and beyond the best system that we've come up with up to this point. I mean, clearly it's the best system. And so I think that if we can get back to that, get back to as you say, get back to the fundamentals, um, having a strong dollar, making more stuff here at home. I think those are, and some of those things are things that one of the reasons why so many people identify with Trump, I think, especially in a lot of those upper Midwest states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, people understand that. I mean, Trump struck a nerve, and it's a new coalition that he has put together. It's a new coalition that didn't necessarily exist, and a lot of the polls that I'm seeing right now, the internals show that with working class people, he's picking up steam right now. He's got the people out there that are actually building, picking up steam with working class people. A lot of the college educated people, it's not as much, but yeah. Oh, I see you brought up the resolution. Do we want to go back and talk about this some more, Tiger?
Of course, if you have the time,
Absolutely.
let me make that a little bit bigger. Um, if you want, you can read it, or I can, whichever one works for you.
Well, let me just go through what I think are some of the highlights of this.
Okay.
And that's the reason people are making this out to be. something that it's really not. To me, this is very, very common sense. Okay. It states, and this is just one relevant part, that the state of West Virginia will not recognize an election of a candidate for president if the Attorney General of West Virginia or the Secretary of State of West Virginia, in consultation with the legislature, determined that election interference by the federal government, foreign governments, or other state governments was a key factor that resulted in a candidate for president obtaining a majority in the Electoral College. Okay. And it goes on to say that election interference includes censorship, information suppression or manipulation, or other unconstitutional, extra constitutional, illegal, or otherwise illegitimate actions by the federal government, foreign governments, or other state governments, either directly or in collusion with elements of the media, social media entities, information entities, or political entities. So, I mean, I think that's a key phrase there. I mean, this is a fairly, it's got a little bit of length to it, but I think that's one of the more important and operative phrases in here. This isn't just we're saying that willy nilly we're going to declare that election interference happened. I mean, there's a process, or there's a process where we will determine that there was election interference that resulted in an illegitimate election. I mean, regardless of what everyone thinks about the 2020 election, we're talking about 40,000 votes. Okay. It wouldn't be hard for anyone to flip that many votes, whether it's foreign agents, whether it's individuals within our own government, whether it's people in the media conspiring together, other people out there conspiring together. It wouldn't be that hard to interfere in an election. And so all this is saying is that if the Attorney General of West Virginia or the Secretary of State, in consultation with the West Virginia legislature, determine that there's election interference, then we just wouldn't recognize the election. And again, as we talked about at the beginning of the program, this is not something that's necessarily a legislative act in the form of a bill. This is a resolution. This is us stating our position, our sentiment, what we think is the case. And it's, I mean, to me, I mean, I think this is a fairly high bar to even get to that point. It's not like we're just going to do it. It's just that if the elected Attorney General or the Secretary of State, along with the legislature, make a determination that there was actual election interference. And so, and there's a very, very strict definition of this. It's just not election interference as, just based on very, very broad terms. These are specific terms that lay out what would qualify for election interference. So, and I know this has gotten a lot of attention in the media in terms of, because the left is trying to make this out to be some outrageous, extreme proposition, but I really don't think it is. I mean, I think this is just common sense. I mean, I don't think if there is election interference on that level that's described in this resolution, I think every state should pass a resolution like this. I think it's just common sense.
I think so. In fact, in the stacking community, these coins that I'm putting up here, rounds that I'm putting up here, are all about recognition of what our government has been doing to our currency, maybe to the rest of us. I mean, I don't want to waste a lot of people's time who don't know what they are, because your topic is way more important. But the point I'm trying to make is, by showing these, that in our community, there is a lot of recognition and awakening to what this goes on. And in fact, the reverse always says, you can't waken someone who pretends to be asleep.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to point that out, because these coins, now they talk mostly about finances, but it applies to everything. What is going on in our country that needs to be reversed?
Yes. Well, Tiger, I need to. I've got some other things I've got to work on. I think we talked. I could talk for about 45 minutes. Is there any other final questions anybody has, or do you have any final questions for me? Or
I think that that Frostbite had one or two questions,
Okay.
and he's one of the persons I've invited to be up on panel. In fact, let me just send him an invite because he is a highly articulate buddy of mine.
Okay. Great.
So I'm going to just send this to him, and while he presents his questions, unfortunately, I have to run to the little men's room.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
No problem.
Let me send that email. And Frosty, it's sent. So feel free to hop on stage. Oh, he says you already answered his. Wow.
Oh, okay.
I know he was. There he goes.
How you doing, sir?
Hey, how's it going, Frosty?
Good. So you already answered two of the questions that I had, and I want to say thank you regarding one thing that you said that's really important for people to understand, and that is just because we have an elected official in office does not make them smart.
Mm-hmm.
It makes
Yes.
them practice.
Right.
And so I really wanted to say thank you for that. It's really easy for us to say that from our standpoint, but to hear an elected official say, hey, I am not necessarily the brightest of them all. I just understand the system. It's really important for people to understand that. So I want to really thank you for being transparent. Transparency in our society is something, we talked about this a lot, is something we don't necessarily see. So I want to thank you first off for being transparent. The only question I really have for you is if this conversation that you were having through the channels and it's proven that it's constitutional, that West Virginia can stand by this, what do you think? And again, I missed some of the beginning of this. So if you've already answered this, bear with me. But what do you think the likelihood that other states would pick up on something like this and put it into legislation in their own areas?
I think there's a strong possibility that some would. I mean, look, we're on paper, we are one of the most Republican conservative states. I mean, I think we voted for Trump more than any other state at a higher percentage other than maybe Wyoming. So give that, be that as it may. But at the same time, I think there are other states that would be willing to jump onto this. I think that if things were to go south in the 2024 election, I think there's at least some states that would jump on. And look, there are, if there is proof of this that comes out, even if it's after, for example, let's say it's well into 2025. I mean, look, there's one power that has not been exercised as much as it should with a lot of these presidents, and that's the impeachment power. If it comes out and if there is evidence put forth that there was election interference to that degree, then it's possible that if Kamala were to have been elected by illegitimate means, then the Congress, if there's enough will from the American people to get her out of there, they could certainly contacted their elected representatives, and she could be impeached and removed from office. That's a power that the Congress has. Now, it would take overwhelming support, and I think it would take a number of legislatures passing resolutions like this. But I think that there's a very, very good chance that at least a few other states would sign on to this. Now, I can't say how many. I mean, but I think there would be some.
Well, I can tell you, as Tiger has stated, within the stacking, even in some of the numismatic community, there are a lot of patriots that are all about serving and protecting our nation. There's a lot of vets, there's a lot of active duty military, and not everybody likes both candidates. But again, when we look at this, and this is something, and I posted in chat. I'm gonna take my hat off. Excuse me if I look like I have bedhead.
That's fine.
Would you say, or would you agree with the term that A president does not have to be liked. They have to be respected.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is a very common misperception with people that, well, people just don't like Trump. I don't care if they don't like him.
Hmm.
We need to respect our leader. We need to respect the person that gets in there. And what is Nick's Coins and I were kind of chatting everything in chat, and she said, he's not a very polished politician. And I'm like, no, but he's an astute businessman. And
Yes.
right now, with the financial state of our economy, that's where we need to be. And so those basically those were the two things that I wanted to ask. But I really did want to say thank you,
Sure.
because it's really easy to come up and say, you know, I'm in office and I got into office because I really understand the law and I really understand this. I'm an attorney, so you know, therefore I am. Um, but the integrity and the transparency that you showed in your comment, I just want to say thank you.
Oh,
Um,
sure. Absolutely.
integrity is huge in my world. So again, thank you from my end.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate those words.
One of the questions here is, are mail-in ballots safer than in the past? I recently watched a video displaying USPS driver dumping many, probably his votes, of mail into a dumpster, and I can't help but wonder if they uh, could have been ballots.
I I don't think there is. I don't think they're as safe as just voting in person. I mean, that's in terms of the security of it. I think that's hard for me to make the case that they're just as safe as voting in person. I mean, because look, things get lost in the mail. I mean, look, there's a chance something will get lost in the mail, and so even if there's not some nefarious activity going on, I think there's a chance that something could get lost in the mail. So, yeah, I don't think they're as safe as voting in person. That's
Mhm.
my position on it.
Yeah. And the thing I want to point out, what Frosty said about liked versus being competent. When Trump was in office the first time, I'd run into a lot of people who didn't like Trump.
Yeah.
And I had a way of saying something that would make those people very, very happy at first and very, very not with the next sentence.
Yeah.
They,
Hey, something I want to add a little follow up to the whole thing about the mail-in ballots in terms of the safety.
okay, I'll hold.
A lot of people are big on same day voting, and look, that's fine. Okay, I think that's great. A lot of states have early voting, and there's been talk about getting people to bank their vote earlier rather than later. And one of the things that I think that people have to understand about how elections will work is in terms of this election data, it is so sophisticated. Okay, these campaigns know if you have voted. And so, for example, if you are determined to be a reliable R voter and you have not voted, you're going to keep getting text messages. You're going to keep getting the things in the mail over and over again. And excuse me, there's a cost to that. And I'm not look, if it's your right to vote on election day, but I do think that there's a distinction between voting in person on election day and doing early voting in person if you can do it. In West Virginia, you can do it about 11 days. But the amount of sophistication that they have right now in terms of information, they know to about a 90% to 95% certainty, they know your political views on things. They know
Absolutely.
statistically, yeah, they know
Yeah.
statistically whether you're a hard Republican or a soft Republican. Everybody in this country who's a voter has a rating between 0 and 100, and you're somewhere on there, okay? And they get it anytime you excuse me, anytime you buy a magazine. If you buy, like, you know, I Love Guns magazine. Okay, they know probably how you're going to vote, and they take all of that data, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats. It's all filtered into an algorithm, and they know. And so, excuse me, they know how what your political instincts are and what your inclinations are. For the most part, it's not a perfect science, but they have an idea. So the one thing you can, if there's early voting, I would at least consider it, because look, One benefit from it is there's a chance you're not going to be getting as many text messages and mailings that's cluttering up your mailbox. So that's something to at least consider. But I understand the concern about the mail-in ballots. I'm not mailing in my ballot.
I had an issue, and now, like I said, I have to learn things sometimes the hard way. My job, and as many of you know, I fly out of West Virginia to New Mexico to work, and sometimes I've been there an extended period of time. I begged and pleaded to have election day off, and they give it to me. Then I called the sheriff's department, who put me in with the correct department. Early voting is October 23rd, and me and my bum leg are going to go down there and get my vote in person.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very grateful for early voting, because that'll allow me to keep my bosses happy.
Yeah.
So
And you might be able to avoid a lot of the text messages and your mailbox being cluttered too. I mean, that's the other benefit.
It'll be cluttered because my wife doesn't like either candidate, so she refuses to vote.
Okay.
So I mean, I explained the viewpoint on Trump. She doesn't trust Kamala, and so she doesn't want to vote for either one. But so we'll be getting the mailings and all that.
Yeah. Okay.
Chuck says, would abolishing the Electoral College require a constitutional amendment?
Well, there is yes and no. What they can there's in theory there's an end round to it. So what states can do is they can pass what's known as a uniform law. We deal with that in a lot of times in states. For example, and I'll just use this as an example. A lot of times states will get together and they will pass what's known as a uniform law that it's identical language that's in every single legislature. So, and I'll use this as an example. An issue like 50 years ago was who had jurisdiction over a child custody matter. And so what would happen is you would have states fighting over what state had jurisdiction over of a child custody case. You might have New Mexico, one parent living in New Mexico and one person living in West Virginia, and you've got two competing court orders. And so what they did is they passed what's known as a uniform law that determines what state has jurisdiction over a child. It's the same language in every single state. There might be one that doesn't have it, but you get the point. That's the whole point of the uniform law. Okay. The end round that they're trying to do with the Electoral College is they're trying to pass a uniform law that would say that if 200 if states amounting to 270 Electoral College votes agree that their votes should go to the majority winner, then effectively what would happen is whoever wins the majority national vote becomes president. So, for example, if New York, I think New York may have passed this, but it only goes into effect once they get to votes worth 270. And now I think that there would be a court challenge to this. I'm not sure what the court challenge would exactly, where it would go. I mean, that's uncertain, but there is an attempt to do an end around that. That is, there's a really strong case to make that it's unconstitutional, but there are states that are attempting to do that.
I fully understand. And I want to briefly say this here, which I was about ready to, and then Nick's comment reminded me. When I've run into people in the past, I say, you know what? You are right. Trump is an a-hole, to which they get really, really happy and big smiles and all that. Look at him and say, but he's the a-hole we need. Other countries have walked on us for years, and none of the previous presidents put them in their place.
Yes.
We need to get back to being an industrial company and being able to do trade, that which made us the world reserve currency after Great Britain. And you can't do that by not making your country strong, which involves everyone working, everyone quit asking for handouts,
Mm-hmm.
and basically turning us back into the industrial company where we're not only making products, but we're producing our own food. We don't have to ship things in. And just a little side note, we almost had another uh, uh, critical thing happen with the ports being shut down with a strike that was averted, but that we got to quit making ourselves weak.
Yes.
We make our own food. We get our own oil. We do our own fracking. We make our own clothes. And we buy American.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only way you can do it. Keep it all internal and make us a better trading company with other trading country with other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to point that out since Nick refreshed my memory. So unless there's any other questions, I know you wanted to go do your next project, and it is Sunday. That might be home time.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I've got some court cases I've got to prepare for this week that are coming up, so I got to jump off here.
Okay. Well, I want everyone to thank Mr. Pritt for taking his valuable time and coming on my channel again to talk with all of us and to let it be clear what this I forget the correct word, resolution is all about, and how it affects us versus a bill, law, and all that.
Yes.
And so thank you so very much, Mr. Pritt.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It was. So when you leave, I'll be asking people to come up on panel. So thank you so very much.
Okay. Thanks. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. So
Tiger, if I can make a recommendation,
yes, sir.
end this stream. So this is isolate of our discussion. So that our viewpoints are not tied directly to his. It'll be a protection thing for him. So let's close this down and then start with our own discussion on another stream.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I'll have to make a thumbnail for that afterwards.
Yeah, that's fine. This way we protect a delegate from our personal viewpoints that may differ from his. It's just a source of protection.
Okay. Everyone stay on here just a moment while I set up the next live stream.
Yeah, again, we don't want to do something that inadvertently ruins the relationship that has already been established. So just it's the political courteous thing to do. So, and it's going to be about 15 or 20 minutes before I can get into the other conversation.
Okay.
So I got some duties taking care of my wife. So.
Okay. So that's, and I'll put the description in it later.
So there was a lot of conversation that happened there that should be food for thought. I had framed questions with Tiger the other day that I wanted to ask him, and he had labeled them so well that he diffused the need for me to. I need you to. Okay, Amy, no problem. He diffused the need for me to ask those, and so he's very astute. He does understand this, and again, I can't tell you how happy I am that he came out in his statement and said, just because I'm an elected official doesn't mean that I'm the smartest and the brightest. I just understand the politics of things. I understand how to work the system. That's why I got elected. It's really important for us to state because politicians don't necessarily make the best leaders. Politicians just make good politicians. So Again, I can't tell you how much I appreciated that comment because, again, coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak, um, that was very good to hear.
Yes, it was. All right, so I've got the StreamYard set up, and let's see here. We get over to YouTube, and that's set up. So I'm going to end this right now. You'll see the generic thumbnail with the tiger eyes and the splayed gold painting on the wall, and so hope to see you all over there, everyone. Right, where? And